Previously on the Skip and Josh Sports Show.
John Gibbons was actually excited. He said the spring training was really long and the players are a little bit tired of the spring training, but he thinks that the games in Montreal are going to give the Jays an emotional kind of boost heading into the season.
First world problems. The games were kind of long in Florida. First world problems. like if that was my job, you have to go to Florida for a month and a half and just play baseball.
The Skip and Josh Sports Show is on now.
Skip.
What's going on?
Do you remember before we ever did this show years ago, sometimes you'd call me randomly and you'd say, I got nothing.
Yeah.
Well, today's the exact opposite.
We got something.
We both have a lot.
I know. It's been a week since we recorded. I have a list of things to talk about, and I know you have another list, probably some of the same things, but wow, it's been a busy week in sports. This is like a time of year, where all the sports overlap. So
it's actually been more than a week since we recorded. It's been 10 days, and I know that one of the listeners is antsy to get the next episode, so lucky for him, we're recording this morning.
Great.
And just to tell the listeners, because we have so much to go through, we're going to go in chronological order. That way I won't forget what I want to say.
Right.
And we're going to start basically with a week ago today, Saturday morning. Around this time.
So you want to talk about the British soccer first? That's what happens on Saturday mornings?
No.
That
wasn't on my list. But if you want to talk about it, then go ahead.
No, it wasn't on my list, but I do watch it.
I'm sure you do. So as the listeners know, I went to the Jays game in Montreal last Saturday.
I was dying to talk to you about it, and I called you and I asked you, how was the game? How was the situation with the entrances and the going outside? And you didn't want to talk about it because you said, I'm going to save it for the show. So I'm dying to hear about it.
So I'll try and make it as short as possible, but it is a somewhat long story.
Sure.
So yes, we got the notification that the entry system into the Olympic Stadium was going to change, and even if you went by metro, you'd have to go outside. And keep in mind, I'm with my dad, who's 83 years old,
right?
And so it's not easy for him to walk long distances. And I didn't want to go outside because the weather wasn't great.
No, it wasn't.
So we decided that we drive to the game instead of taking the metro.
Oh God,
which we've never done, and
driving there is fine. It's the parking situation that's terrible.
Well, no, we were going to park indoors. We weren't going to start driving around looking for parking because we wanted to park as close to the door as possible, so that he'd have...
Yeah, but even then, the parking situation's bad. I remember parking inside there once or twice, and when it's a 50,000 attendance game, they start going to overflow parking and overflow parking, and then next thing you know, you're miles away.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because we got to the stadium. Keep in mind, there was a pregame ceremony at 12:30 that I would have liked to have seen.
Oh,
but anyway, so we got to the stadium, I think 45 minutes before the game started, or maybe even an hour before the game started.
Mm-hmm.
But getting into the parking lot literally took at least 45 minutes. Because they have 4 different entrances to get in, but all of them had crazy long lineups to get in. Anyhow, we finally get in. So now at this point, there's no chance that we're going to see the pregame ceremony.
Maybe not even the beginning of the game. And actually, in this situation, I think for me, the pregame ceremony is actually maybe more important than the game.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Although the pregame ceremony on Friday night was much better than the Saturday ceremony. For those who parked indoors, you didn't have to go outside.
Oh, good. You just went right in.
Yeah. Metro, you'd have to go outside, but for those who parked indoors, you didn't have to go outside.
Okay.
They had your bag security checked right when you got out of the parking lot. So then, before you actually get into the rotunda, they had all the security checks. So anyway, by the time we got there weren't that many people anymore because the game had already started at this point. It was the first inning. It was the top of the first inning. And then the first thing we did, actually, it's become a tradition. We bought a 50-50 ticket, which normally we don't do. But I knew from experience from last year and the year before that the draw
is huge.
It's huge because there's so many people there.
Right.
So we bought a 50-50 ticket.
What does the 50 go to? The other 50? Like, what is it? Is it a charity? Is it like...
Yeah, there's 3 different charities,
Okay,
actually.
okay,
There's
just...
Baseball Quebec.
Yeah.
There's the Montreal Canadiens Children's Foundation or
Foundation.
something.
Okay,
And I
yeah.
forget what the third one is.
Okay, I was just curious.
And so we bought the ticket before we even knew like what the
Prize was.
what the
Yeah.
prize was.
Mhm.
Anyhow, so then we finally find our seats and we sit down, and it's the first inning, and the pot's already, and it shows on the scoreboard. It's constantly increasing.
Right.
In the first inning, the pot was already $90,000.
Holy smokes.
I mean, it's that divided by 2.
Yeah,
but
still. Yeah, still.
Anyway, they do the draw in the 8th inning, and by the time they did the draw, the pot was like $190,000.
Oh my God.
We didn't win.
I was like, why are you telling me about the 50-50? I've been to a million games with a 50-50. Is Josh about to tell me that they won? I was like,
No. But the reason I mention is because right after they did the draw, everyone left.
Oh my God. So people are coming to play a lottery? That's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, at that point, all the starters were out of the game.
Right, and the score was pretty big, right?
No, it was 6-4, whatever. It was a close game. But I mean, all the starters are out of the game. Plus, the game was crazy long. You know, normally a game is 3 hours or less. So this was the 8th inning. And so the game wasn't even over yet. It was already past 4 o'clock and the game started at 1.
Mm-hmm.
So we've already been there forever. And they did the draw, and I didn't really care about the outcome of the game. So we left.
Oh my God.
So anyway, but the game itself. So we didn't eat it.
You don't need to talk about the game itself.
No, but
it's
I'm
an
just saying.
exhibition game. We know what it is.
We didn't eat stadium food. We had our own food.
Right.
You know, the first 3 innings, all the starters played, and Russell Martin got a huge hand every time he did anything.
Right.
Like he's a fan favorite there, obviously.
Are you going to go next year?
I'm going to go next year. I mean, I don't even know if there's
like, it doesn't even sound like you had such a good time.
No. It was fine. It was more the act of taking my dad to the game because he can't get to games anymore, right? Like he's not going to come to Toronto to go to a game.
Right.
So he had a good time and everything was, you know, whatever. We sat down and we had decent seats and, you know, so that was all good.
Well, I want to give you my impressions of the weekend just from not going to the games.
Okay.
So there's something that struck me in that whole weekend last week because it was, you know, baseball fever here. Mm-hmm. So like my social media feeds are full of pictures of people at the games, right? So many people taking pictures of with their kids at the Olympic Stadium at the game or with the grandparents and them and the kids. Really nice, beautiful family moments. Nothing against that. But the one thing that struck me from seeing all these pictures of people at the Olympic Stadium is what a crappy piece of garbage that stadium is. It's like all I had were these yellowy tinged pictures. Everything looks like it is, you know what I'm talking about? Like there's a certain kind of light, a certain kind of color inside the stadium. It's this hazy yellow, you know.
Well, part of it is because all the seats are yellow.
Yeah, but I mean, I just saw like picture after picture after picture of these hazy yellow, terrible looking stadium, right? It's like, God, what a terrible, terrible place for a baseball game. And so like my son, who's just starting to get into baseball now at 16 years old, and he's been to a couple of games in major league stadiums, you know, Blue Jays game, and we went to a game in Philadelphia, and they watched the game on TV. He saw the game on TV with his friends the first night, and he's like, my God, what a terrible stadium, right? That's the first thing he said to me. He goes, what a terrible stadium. What an awful place to watch a baseball game. It looks like garbage. You know, honestly.
Now, it's interesting because the OIB did do some work on the stadium, but they did work on the field or maybe in the dugout or maybe in the locker rooms. Right. So stuff that the fans don't get to see.
I just saw these yellow seats with cement everywhere and just like being indoors. Like it just didn't look like a fun experience, although, you know, obviously it is a fun experience. It's all nostalgia, right? It's all nostalgia about the Expos. Yeah. So that's great. And, you know, obviously I'm a huge Expos fan, but I mean, I don't think I could bring myself to going to these exhibition games.
No. I mean, look, if they're going to get a team, they need a brand new stadium. There's no question they can't play in that stadium. You know, that's a temporary facility. You know, if they get awarded a team, I guess the major leagues will let them play there for one season or something like that. But they realize that they can't have a team full time and use that stadium. There's no question about that.
Right.
And by the way, I was chatting with the guy sitting next to me at the game who I never met in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about, there's a lot of hype and a lot of excitement about Montreal getting a team. So my prediction is, I'm not saying they're going to get a team, but if it's going to happen, it's actually going to happen pretty soon, because now all the stars are somewhat aligned. There's two teams, Tampa and Oakland, who may not have stadiums to play in.
I don't believe it, though. I mean, you remember when we had a team, when we had our team, there was always that threat of like, oh, they're going to move them to here, or, oh, they're going to move them to there. And then, it never happened. And when obviously it happened at the end when things got terrible. But I mean, there was that threat for like 10 years, like, oh, we're going to move the Expos to somewhere, like.
Right, I'm not saying Oakland or Tampa are going to move.
But Oakland and Tampa are just going to use Montreal as like a means to get a stadium.
Right, but Major League Baseball also wants to expand by 2 more teams.
That's what they say.
And look, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it does happen, now would be the time for it to happen, because apparently there's an ownership group in place, because they have designs for a stadium, because they have a location for a stadium.
I don't know where it is.
Also, because more importantly, the current mayor of the city wants this to happen.
The mayor's
Who knows
a clown.
if the next mayor is going to want this to happen?
The mayor's a clown, honestly.
It's fine that he's a clown, but he's supporting this, right?
You know what? The mayor of Quebec City also wanted a team, and you know what he did? They built a stadium. They built an arena to get the Nordiques back, and you know what? They're still waiting. So the mayor is
because Gary Bettman doesn't want to put a team in Quebec City for some reason.
But
that's
the mayor,
that's not the mayor's fault.
I agree the Stars are alliance for the Expos, but it's still like, what did we say last week? What's the % chance of the team coming back? Under 5%, yeah,
or less. Yeah. It's still very low. But if it's going to happen, it's either going to happen really soon or it's not going to happen at all. That's my point.
For me, the biggest factor that's different from the time that they moved is we don't know who the ownership group is, but we can kind of make an assumption that Bell Media is part of it, or right. I'm hoping they are anyways, because the climate of the sports networks and the cable companies and everything in Canada has changed since the Expos left. And you have these two giants, Rogers and Bell, and they're basically in a bit of a turf war over rights for sporting events. And Rogers, they're winning right now, right? They took all the NHL games and they've got all the Blue Jays games. Yeah. So TSN and the Bell Media family they want the content, right? So they would love to kind of make the Expos as the other Canadian team and have all the Expos games on TV, right? It's like they have, believe me, all summer long, there's 5 TSN channels that would be happy to have Expo games, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Hi there, Skip and Josh will be right back. To get in touch with them, you can send them an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. You can follow them on Twitter @skipandjosh, and you can visit their website at www.skipandjosh.com. And now, back to the show.
All right, so I want to go to the next topic, because we've been talking for a while about the baseball.
Yeah.
What's the next thing on your list of chronological events?
Final Four.
So we won't spend too much time on the Final Four, because I know we have a lot more stuff to talk about.
Yeah. But we just want to mention that it's over.
Yeah, it's over. Congratulations
to Rob Bobot.
Yeah.
Who I watched the Final Four with him.
Yeah.
And he won our pool.
He's probably happy to get a prize from the prize closet. We'll find something for him. Well, look, he was leading from the beginning, right? Like he was in first place in our pool almost from the start.
He didn't go wire to wire, but he did. He was in first or second place, I think, the whole time.
I mean, what do you think about the championship game? Everyone this week was just saying about how much of a horrible game it was in terms of the officiating, and there was no flow. And I mean, I agree with that, but I mean, it is what it is, right?
I don't know if it was the officiating. I mean, there were a lot of fouls called.
To me, I think it was the style of play of the teams, where they both like to pound it inside. They both like to go all out for the offensive rebounds. So it makes for a very physical game. And I think the refs couldn't really, I mean, once they start calling fouls, they were trying to be consistent, right?
Well, it's the old adage. Do you want to get if the speed limit is 60, do you want to get a speeding ticket at 61, 62, 63? Like,
right.
When do you start giving out tickets?
Right.
So when do you start giving out fouls? Do you give a foul on every little thing that happens and call everything?
Right.
Or do you let some things slide for both teams?
They were calling everything.
So if they're calling everything, then there's going to be a lot of fouls.
Yeah, I mean, I felt bad for Gonzaga, like, but look,
They could have won that game. I mean, either team could have won that game. That game was up for grabs with a minute left to go.
oh, 100%. But I mean, they couldn't make a shot at all in the last 5 minutes. Like they couldn't make any shots. Gonzaga, their offense completely disappeared. That's just the way. I mean, they're a great defensive team, and Karnowski, their big man, had a horrible game. Not just the second half, the whole game. He couldn't hit anything, even from underneath the basket. He couldn't get anything going. And that's a big factor for them. Not that he's a big scorer for them. He only gets like 10 points a game. But that 10 points a game makes a difference, right?
For sure.
Especially when your other shooters are not doing anything. But I mean, look, Gonzaga, do you think they'll ever win a championship?
I have no idea.
I mean, like, I don't know. Winning a championship is pretty hard. But like, when you, every year, like, the list of teams that wins the national championship is small, right? Like, it's always the same teams. Right? It's North Carolina, Duke, Kentucky, like Kansas.
Yeah, they always come from power conferences.
Yeah,
you don't see a mid-major winning it all.
But I don't think it's fair to call Gonzaga a mid-major anymore. They've been to the tournament, I think, for 25 straight years.
But still, they play in a conference that's not a major conference.
I don't even know what conference they play in, the Pacific or whatever it's called.
I think it's the West Coast Conference.
Yeah. So, I mean, they have a tremendous program going right now. It's unbelievable. So, I mean, I think they can make it back to the Final Four, and then it's basically luck if they can hopefully win a championship. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
So, looking forward to next year, and then, I mean, obviously, this is kind of going to be the end of our college basketball,
One more thing I want to add.
Chit-chat, yeah.
Ever since, the season ended,
Mm-hmm.
you've been hearing about all these college players who are going to the NBA draft.
Yes.
So Duke's already lost 2 guys.
Luke Kennard declared yesterday.
Oh, did he? So they lost 3 guys.
Yeah.
I didn't hear about that one.
And Chase Jeter, I almost called him Derek Jeter. Chase
Jeter declared as well?
No, he didn't declare. He's leaving. He's going to transfer.
Oh, okay. He's actually not a big loss for Duke, but I was reading something, Duke's projected starting lineup next season.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize any of the names on the list.
Well, are they new guys? I guess they're a bunch
They're all
of new
new
freshmen,
guys.
right? But
Yeah,
Frank Jackson is still there, right?
Is he still there? I don't even know.
And Grayson Allen hasn't officially declared for the draft, has he?
Not that I've heard. I didn't know about Luke Kennard till you just told me. So.
Allen said when he was a freshman that he's staying all 4 years. And people find that hard to believe because, I mean, he could have come out last year and been a first-round pick. His stock went down this year because he didn't have a great year and there's all the tripping business. So, but I still think he's a first-round pick. But I don't know. We'll see what happens to him.
Okay.
But certainly Giles declared, and so did...
Which is like, that was the funniest one because that's like a Corey Maggette situation.
Yeah.
In that Maggette never really started. Actually, he didn't start.
Yeah.
He was like the 6th guy on the team in his only year at Duke.
Yeah.
And he declared for the draft.
But Corey Maggette did not have a great NBA career, but he had a long NBA career. He played in the NBA for like 15 years. He just never did very much,
Well, Giles didn't do much for Duke this year.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even a starter, and he's declaring. So I just found that funny.
But Marcus Bolden said he's not going in the draft. He's coming back to Duke next year. So
that makes sense because he didn't have such a great year.
No, and he was, he was projected as a first-round pick. They thought he's going to come out. Like, preseason, he's projected as one of the one-and-dones. So I'm happy that he's coming back because
he's a guy that can benefit from one more season of college.
100%. So all the big teams are going to reload, and we'll start talking about, college basketball, maybe, December, January next year. Yeah.
The Skip and Josh Sports Show is back.
I almost wanted to call you when I saw the press release. You texted me saying the NHL's not going to the Olympics, and I literally saw the press release 5 minutes before you had texted me, and I was reading the NHL statement, and I almost wanted to do like an emergency episode just to talk about it. So I wanted to talk about this topic by basically asking you a bunch of questions.
Okay.
So it could be like a new segment, like a Q&A, questions for Josh.
Okay.
Or we'll try to ask the listeners for a name for the segment. So, like, how do you feel about the NHL players not going? Are you for the NHL players going, or you don't care?
Well, it's not an easy answer. First of all, I'm not surprised. I'll tell you that. I'll start off by saying I'm not surprised. Because,
well, no, I mean, they said it all along that Bettman's been consistent. If he's been consistent about that they're not going.
Right. Am I upset about it? Obviously, I would like to watch games involving the
Right.
best players in the world. There's
I
no
agree.
question.
I agree.
That said, I don't think the Olympics should have professionals in them.
You've
That's
always, you know what? You've always told me that. You've always told me that about everything in the Olympics. Why are the professional players playing? Right?
like they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be in hockey and basketball and any of these things.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I'll even go a step further. I don't think the Olympics should include team sports. Like
No,
to
that
me,
doesn't
the
make sense.
Olympics are, track and field
Yeah,
or
okay,
swimming or skiing,
Yeah.
Individual sports.
Yeah.
I don't think team sports should be in the Olympics.
Well, that's a little bit too far. It's still a sport, and there's no way to play individual hockey, right? So,
No, but so hockey shouldn't be in there then.
okay. Now, question number 2. Do you feel that there is a benefit to the NHL and the owners of having the players go to the Olympics?
Only if it's in North America.
You kind of agree with the owners that, like, hey, I don't want to send my players there. It's not giving us any benefit.
It's not like if you're playing in PyeongChang or Beijing or whatever.
I'm impressed how you pronounced PyeongChang.
Then no, it is no benefit. In fact, it's quite the opposite because you have to stop your season for a couple of weeks or more.
Mm-hmm.
So that derails things for people who don't follow the Olympics. They follow their own hockey team, and we don't have a game for 2.5 weeks.
Right.
And then there's also obviously the risk of injury to the players, which is huge.
Yeah.
And then there's costs involved. Like it's expensive to fly over there to get hotels and everything.
I knew you'd have this take. That's why I wanted to ask you these questions, because all you've heard this week on the radio and in print and everywhere is that basically like anti-Bettman, anti-NHL owners, and how could they, and this is wrong, and this is wrong. And of course I want to see the NHL players at the Olympics. I love to watch it, and I would be one of these people that would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch the games, right? But it's interesting, like, to hear like you give like a kind of real take about this, saying like, hey, they're not wrong. I mean, they're not going to get any ratings, right? So, and what is the actual benefit? Who knows, right?
Yeah,
I mean, everyone says they want to grow the game, and I agree, they want to grow the game, and you need to have all eyes on the game. But are all eyes really on the game if it's in that time zone? Maybe if they want to grow the game in Asia, they're saying they want to grow the game in China and Asia, but I don't know.
The other factor that I didn't even mention. So let's say they go, and let's say God willing, no one gets injured.
Well, that's not happened because every time they've gone, someone's gotten injured.
Right, but let's say no one gets injured. Even still, when the tournament's done and the players have to come back, so it takes time to come back, and then there's the whole time zone thing.
Yeah.
So even when you come back, you're not fully regulated to your North American time zone.
Yeah.
And then you're exhausted. So you might not be injured, but then you have to play an NHL game like the next day or in 2 days. And I recall Saku Koivu, when he played for Finland, he didn't get injured, but when he came back, he was exhausted, and I think he might have missed the first Canadiens game.
They did. They didn't play him.
Right. And so, so you're hurting your team. So the teams that send a lot of players there, like back in the day, Detroit would send a lot of players and Colorado would send a lot of players.
Well, that brings me to Washington with Ovechkin, right? He's saying he wants to go. Washington's loaded with players that would go play for their national teams.
Right. And I mean, look, if Ovechkin says he wants to go and his owner has said, that he could do whatever he wants, I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem with him doing what he wants.
I want to get back to that in a sec, that Ovechkin business, but I'm going to just continue on my other train of thought of the question. So, like, the only thing that I didn't like about the way this whole thing rolled out is basically the BS coming out of Bettman. It's all bull. This whole thing is about the next CBA, if you ask me. That's what this whole thing is about. Because he said they're not going to go because they didn't want to pay. It's too expensive. They didn't want to pay. And the IOC said they're not paying for it anymore. But then you know what happened? The IIHF said they're going to pay for all the costs and the insurance and everything. And then all of a sudden, you didn't hear Bettman talking about the cost anymore. He was talking about, no, it's no good. We don't want to interrupt the season because we don't want to have a compressed schedule. Well, guess what? You had a compressed schedule this year because of your stupid World Cup of Hockey that happened in September.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's also BS. So to me, this whole thing is both sides digging in. Well, not both sides. Mostly the owners already digging in for the next collective bargaining agreement to use the players going to the Olympics as one of the points of bargaining.
You could be right, but you know what? If that's the case, if the players really want to go that badly,
then they have to talk to their PA and say, this is important to us.
Well, Bettman not letting them go is not going to help him in the next negotiation. It's going to hurt him in the next negotiation because the players are going to be pissed.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
so, but the truth is, like I said, I'm not surprised that they're not going. If I were an owner, I wouldn't want my players to go. I wouldn't want my season to be interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the NBA is lucky because the NBA season is in the winter and the NBA and basketball is in the Summer Olympics.
Right.
So the NBA gets away with it that way. If there's some way to do that for hockey, I don't know what. I'm just talking nonsense here.
Apparently there was talk about having hockey in the Summer Olympics.
Well, then you know what? Then I don't think the owners would mind as much. I mean,
but I think
the
IHF and the Olympic organization didn't want that.
No, I mean, obviously hockey's not a summer sport. You're not going to do that.
No, because they're not catering to the NHL players. They're talking about the sport. It's played on ice, right?
Right.
It's clearly a winter sport.
It's not a summer sport. You're not going to put hockey in the Summer Olympics.
So my next question is what happens if Ovechkin goes?
No one knows the answer to that because is he going to be fined by his team for missing games? Like if you have a job and you don't go to work, then you can get docked pay for not going to work.
Contract? And then what happens to Backstrom? Does he go to Sweden? Does TJ Oshie go to the United States? Does Holtby play for Canada? Oh, he said he wouldn't. So that's already interesting. Ovi says he wants to go.
Once one player goes, it opens up a huge can of worms.
Well, then is it up to each individual owner to say yes or no? It's okay? Because that's going against what we've seen so far. Because right now, there's not one owner that said anything. I know that the Washington owner has said in the past that he would have let Ovechkin go. But this week, not one owner said a peep. Every word came out of Bettman.
I don't think it's up to the owners. Like, if a player wants to go, it sounds to me like Ovechkin really wants to go. I believe he's going to do whatever he wants to do. And if the team finds him or docks him pay for the number of games he misses, I don't even think he's going to care. So he's going to miss 5-10 games, maybe
what if they
NHL
void his
games.
Contract?
So he'll pay back whatever he gets on a per game basis, prorated.
You know what's interesting? Like people are saying, well, it's mostly coming out of Russia, that there could be free agents this year. For instance, it directly affects the Canadians with 2 players. What about Markov and Radulov, right? These guys are both free agents. And what if they decide in the summer, you know what? I really want to play for Russia in the Olympics. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go play in the KHL. And they're going to let me go to the Olympics.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, because the KHL's already said they're going to let anyone go,
Right, that wouldn't surprise me. And the KHL actually pays their players pretty well.
Well, if they get paid. You've heard stories about, there's big contracts with a huge number, and then in the end, you don't get it all.
Right.
Right. Who knows?
But that wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, if you really want to go to the Olympics and you don't mind playing in the KHL, I mean, I know Radulov's played there for years.
Yeah. Well, obviously, he felt like he wanted to come back for a reason, right? I mean,
right. But I mean, he's on a 1-year deal, so he could do whatever he wants.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're taking a bit of a risk because, you have a bit more job security and financial security playing in the NHL if you're a good enough player. But that wouldn't surprise me. And so you're going to see, each country might have one really good player that you weren't expecting.
Yeah.
I think the last time the NHLers didn't go, Sweden had Peter Forsberg.
That's right.
Was he not in the NHL yet at the time? I think he may not have been drafted yet or something. I'm not sure exactly what the situation was.
No, he wasn't in the NHL yet.
Right, and he wasn't a superstar at that point either. But so each country's going to have 1 or 2 players like that. If in fact the NHLers don't end up going. And by the way, even though the door is shut, it's not shut. There's always a chance.
Well, that was my next question. Like, where do you think's happening? Is this a big bluff by Bettman right now?
Oh no, I don't think he's bluffing at all.
No,
I think he legitimately doesn't want to go. Now I think either the IOC or the NHLPA are going to open up talks again, and I'm putting that in quotations. Yeah. I think there's going to be one more last ditch effort to make it happen. We may not even hear about it. But I don't think they're going to go. I think this is the end result is what it is.
So for you, the one guy who I know that watched the Spengler Cup this past January.
Yeah.
you got a preview of what Team Canada's Olympic team is going to look like.
Exactly, and they won the Spengler Cup. So if all goes as planned, they might win another gold in PyeongChang.
Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy.
Check out the Skip and Josh Sports Show on Twitter. You know that little app with the little blue Tweety bird? Yeah, you can follow them there at Skip and Josh.
I have a question for you.
Oh, good.
Why the hell has Carey Price played the last 2 games?
I don't know. You're right. They're asking. The problem is there's no right answer. There's no magic formula at the end of the year now when teams have clinched. You know, like players are playing. Is Holtby playing for Washington?
I have no idea.
I don't know. Like players are still playing for their teams. You know, so
like Shea Weber isn't playing, and
no,
I agree with
but
that.
Price is not playing tonight. The last game.
And Alexei Emelin got injured this week.
Yeah.
I don't know how long.
There's
he's
no
out.
magic formula. Because you know what's going to happen? If they rest him, and he plays bad the first game of the playoffs, everyone's going to say, "Oh, he's rusty. They shouldn't have rested him so much."
But do you recall when the Canadians had their bye week, which I can't stand?
Yeah.
He came back and he was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
So he didn't play for a whole week.
I
and he
agree
was
with
great.
you. Of all the players, he should not play because if he gets injured, they're screwed. Right? They're done. And that's the one player you cannot afford to get injured. But look, he didn't get injured. And he's not going to play the last game, and then we're going to go into the playoffs.
I mean, there's other guys too, like Emelin.
Yeah, no, of course.
Markov, and you know, the older guys who are nursing bruises and bangs and whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I would have used a complete farm team lineup.
They almost did yesterday. They called up guys from 1 or 2 guys from Hamilton, and they used all their extra players and. I think he did what he thought was best. Look, that's why he's the coach, right?
I mean, I watched the game against Buffalo, and the Canadians looked so disinterested in that game.
Oh, and they should be, and they're even more disinterested last night against Tampa because.
So if that's the case, then don't use the starters.
Yeah, I mean, look, they gifted Tampa 2 points that they needed, and are people like on the ledge in Toronto right now?
Oh, it's crazy here in Toronto. All the fans are super nervous. You know, they thought they had a playoff spot.
I mean, it's in
up.
their hands. They just have to win 1 game, right?
They don't even have to win. They just have to get a point.
A point. They just need 1 point out of 2 games. Tampa's 1 point behind Toronto with 1 game left to play, and Toronto has 2 games left to play. So
and Toronto just needs a point. All they have to do is lose in overtime.
Oh my God.
And they make the playoffs.
But you know they're playing like Pittsburgh and Columbus, right?
Right. But these games are meaningless.
But Pittsburgh and Columbus are meaningless, exactly. So. Look, Toronto should do it, but I understand why Toronto fans are so nervous is because like they haven't been in the playoffs for so long and like they want to see it happen so badly. They're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
I want to point something out.
Look, I hope Toronto makes it because I think
too.
they're an exciting team to watch. I think it's going to benefit all their young players from being in the playoffs. Can they beat Washington? No. I don't think they have any hope in hell against Washington, but I mean, they're fun to watch, so why not? Who doesn't want to see Mitch Marner and Nylander and Austin Matthews? Why wouldn't you want those guys in the playoffs? It's great.
Right, and I want there to be as many Canadian teams as possible in the playoffs because I know that Gary Bettman will hate that.
You know what? And the Toronto can actually still pass Boston and get into 3rd.
Yes, they can. That's right.
Yeah.
By the way, there's a team that clinched the playoff spot that's minus in goal differential.
Ottawa.
Yeah.
They're on a terrible streak right now. They're banged up. Carlson was hurt, and they went into the tailspin at the worst possible time. So.
And somehow they're still in 2nd place in the Atlantic.
Yeah. Well, look, the Atlantic's garbage. Canadians. It's crazy that they won the Atlantic with such a kind of topsy-turvy season that the Canadians had. You know, there's so much focus on the Canadians here, and it's usually all negative. But in the end, they won the division. And you know what?
Which, by the way, I think I said this to you 2 months ago.
Yeah, you did. You told me they were going to win the division. But you know what? The turnaround under Julien is quite remarkable, honestly. I think before the last couple of losses, which are kind of meaningless, they were like something like 15-5 under Julien, which is pretty incredible.
It is incredible because the team is basically the same team. So you have to explain to me how the same roster started the season so well, end of the season so well, and in the middle of the season they were awful. You have to explain that to me.
Everybody that said that Terrier needed to get fired because the team didn't like him, the team wasn't playing for him, the message wasn't there anymore, all these people were right. They needed a new voice in the room. They needed a kind of fresh approach to the game plan. And look, I don't want to get into X's and O's, but I listen to the sports radio and you hear like these commentators that actually are kind of X's and O people, and there are real knowledgeable hockey people that can tell you exactly what the Canadians are doing that are different. There's some kind of, I don't want to get into the X's and O's, but they've got this kind of swarm defense that they're using right now, which is basically like attacking the guy who has the puck to get the puck back, which is totally the opposite of what they were doing before, which was completely passive. So, I mean, there are things that Julien's doing that are making them better, but like I've said, I don't think coaching makes that much of a difference. But in the short spurt that they had, I think the fresh approach of a new voice, I think was a key, right? And obviously, look at Carey Price since the coaching change. He's night and day, right?
So my question to you is, so how long is it before the players get tired of hearing Julien's voice?
Probably before his contract's over.
Right.
Yeah. Now, since we're talking about hockey playoffs, we spoke off air before we started recording, and I told you that I had a preemptive what bugs me.
Okay.
Things that bug me?
The NHL schedule has not been released yet for the playoffs.
No, it hasn't.
And there is something that's most likely going to happen that is going to bug the hell out of me and actually drive you crazy. Mm-hmm. It hasn't happened yet because we haven't seen the schedule, but I know it's imminent.
Okay.
So the Canadians are playing the Rangers.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? Day games.
That means there's going to be a Sunday afternoon game.
See, I told you I had something and you knew what I was going to talk about.
And it's going to be, not only is there going to be a Sunday afternoon game, it's going to be 2 games in 2 days. This is going to be after a Saturday night game.
Yeah. Now,
rather than have a day off between games.
This is why people should listen to this show, because in 5 days from now, with the NHL schedule, or in 3 days from now, I should say, when the NHL playoff schedule is going to come out, all of a sudden people are going to be like, why are they playing a day game? People are going to be like, I don't understand. How come there's day games? And meanwhile, me and you have been thinking about this for 3 years.
Well, I'll tell you why. It's all because of NBC. 100%. NBC gave a boatload of money to the NHL.
Yeah.
And NBC now dictates when the games are going to be. It's that simple.
And Pierre Maguire already alluded on the local radio here, that he was going to be doing the Rangers series for NBC. So you already know that the game's going to be on. Although Washington, Pittsburgh, those teams are like the darlings for the American network. So I mean, I'm sure those games are going to be heavily televised.
But there's going to be more than one day game. Like there'll be several day games on Sundays.
I guess, yeah.
And there might even be day games on Saturdays too. But you know what? I was thinking about this also earlier this week, not knowing that you would bring it up today. I have to tell you, the day games, the only people that are bothered by the day games are the fans. And I'll tell you why. The owners don't care. The general managers don't care. The coaches don't care. The players don't even care.
I think the players do care, because most of this, it takes them out of their routine, right? I mean, they're used to playing only night games, all of a sudden day games.
It might take them out of their routine.
I know you hate that. They're delicate geniuses. They can't play a day game, right?
No, but here's the thing. All the owners, the general managers, the coaches, and the players, they all know the reason for the day games is because NBC wants it. And they also know that NBC is giving a boatload of money to the NHL.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, the players get half of that money.
Yeah.
So if you said to the players, would you rather play day games and get double the money, or would you rather only play night games and get half the money? They'd all say, give me double the money. I'll play whatever time you want me to play.
But why is it that in Canada, we love watching the hockey at night?
I'll tell you why.
And why do they think that people are going to watch it during the day? The trend in North American sports, didn't the NFL figure out pretty quickly that it's better to put their games on at night?
Well, first of all,
they want to get as many night games as possible.
I'll answer your first question first. We prefer night games because that's how we were brought up, number one. But number two, the playoffs usually happen in the spring when the weather's nice. And in Canada, it's the first chance that people get to go outside, like on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon. So no one wants to stay indoors on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon and watch television. They want to go outside.
Yeah.
That's why we prefer to watch games at night. Now, in the States, it doesn't really matter. If you're playing in LA or in Florida or whatever, you can go outside any day of the week, any time of the year. It doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
So And why does NBC want the games on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon? Because they have nothing else to put on their network during that time slot. That is why.
It's true.
On Saturday night, NBC has Saturday Night Live. They don't want to preempt that.
Yeah.
Also prime time. They don't want to preempt their prime time shows on Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah.
So this is why they want the games on in the afternoon. Look, I don't agree with it, but it's not going to change. As long as NBC has the rights to hockey, it's not going to change.
Right.
And everybody's winning because the NHL gets more money, the players get more money, and it's all about money. So the only people that really care are the fans.
Right.
And it's really only the Canadian fans. The American fans, they're used to watching sports in the afternoon.
Right. Got you. Okay. Makes sense.
So again, this is similar to why the NHL players aren't going to the Olympics. I don't necessarily like it, but I understand why it's happening.
Right.
So why are there day games? I don't like it, but I understand why it's happening.
Sure. Well, I mean, look, I don't know. Will the Habs have more than one day game? Probably one.
They might have one, maybe two, whatever.
Yeah.
It depends who they're playing.
Well, they're definitely playing the Rangers.
No, but I mean in the second round if they advance.
Oh, no, I'm just talking about
Right?
the Rangers series.
If they're playing, I don't know, Ottawa or Toronto in the second round, they're not going to have any day games.
No, 100%. You're right. Yeah.
If they're playing a Canadian team in the second round.
Yeah. Do you want to tell the listeners about the NHL playoff pool they can enter?
Yeah. So I created a pool on sportsnet.ca. And if you go to our website, I'm sure the link and the password will be there. If you want to join our group, it's called the Skip and Josh Sports Show Hockey Pool. Basically, you have to pick players. You have a budget, so you can't just pick all the best players. And I believe that after every round, you have to pick again. So once some of your players get eliminated in the first round, you can pick again in the second round. Now, I'm not 1,000% sure, but I think once the semifinals start, you can't pick again when the finals start. So really, you only have to pick 3 times: before the first round, before the second round, and before the third round, and that's it.
It's a commitment. You have to stay with it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to sign up later today, and I'll put the link on the website. Hopefully everybody will sign up.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Just what bugs me.
Oh, you have a what bugs me, a real one.
I do.
Oh, God. Go hit me. As you say, lay it on me.
You're kidding me? Boy, are you bugging me, man. I'm gonna nail. Ooh, I'm getting bugged now. Whoa, man.
So what bugs me is, I think it was about a week ago that the Canadians hit the 100-point plateau for the season.
Yeah.
And I saw on the ticker and a few other places that, anytime a team hits the 100-point plateau, the sports networks make a big deal out of it. So what bugs me is, why are you making such a big deal out of it? Now, in this day and age where you get a point for losing, everyone gets 100 points. It's not even a big deal. It's not even worth mentioning. So it completely bugs me.
You're 100% right, because they always talk about the different records of the teams, and this also goes with goalie wins.
Oh yeah,
because
that's another
the goalies of this era are racking up wins at an astronomical pace because of the shootouts and the overtimes, right?
Right, and there's
so
no
the
ties
records are
anymore.
skewed.
There used to be ties, so you didn't get as many wins.
Yeah. So Carey Price is going to soon be the winningest goalie in the Habs history because of the era that he's playing in.
Yeah. So just don't make a big deal over a team getting 100 points because it's not a big deal. I think it said that it's the 19th time in the Canadiens franchise history that they've reached the 100-point plateau.
That's all.
That's apparently all. Now, that might have been a big deal in the 70s and the 80s, but it's not a big deal now. And I don't know how many of those 19 happened in the last 10 years. I have no idea.
Certainly should not be a big deal because it's pretty... I mean, they have a good record. Look, they're 20 games over 500. They have a good record, but I mean, like you said, not hard to get to 100.
What the NHL should do, you notice that in football and in basketball and in baseball, the standings are basically determined by wins.
Yeah.
There's no points. So just determine it by wins. Whoever has the most wins. You know, don't give 3 points for this or 2 points for that or whatever.
But then they'd have to have no more ties.
That's fine. So have no more ties.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Actually, there is no more ties, but you're saying the overtime win would count for the same as a regular win.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
You'd also, by the way, now with teams knowing that they'll get that guaranteed point if they lose in overtime, You notice that some teams.
Oh,
in the
5
last
minutes
5
before the
minutes-
end of the third period, it's
Right.
shut it down. Yeah.
Exactly. So that won't happen anymore. You'll actually have exciting last 5 minutes of a game.
Beauty. That's why you should be the commissioner.
I should.
Yeah, no, you definitely should. Well, the problem is the commissioner is looking out for the owners, so you're not looking out for the game.
No.
Your position is like what Bill Simmons, did I ever tell you about this? He thinks there should be
Yes.
a U.S. appointed position in the U.S. government called the sports czar.
Yeah, you did.
And this person should be making every important decision about the major sports to make sure things are on the up and up, and like mostly looking out for the fans and the integrity of the games.
Yeah. The commissioners in every league,
They work
their
for the
only
owners.
concern,
Yeah,
their
they
only
work for the
concern
owners.
is making money for the owners. They don't care about the fans.
Yeah.
You know, when you see them on television being interviewed, whatever, they'll say whatever they want to say, but they don't care about the fans. They want to make as much money as possible. So if it just so happens that playing a day game on a Saturday afternoon is going to make more money for the NHL, they're going to do it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Great talking to you.
Likewise,
And we'll speak to you next week.
looking forward to it already.
All right.
The Skip and Josh Sports Show is over now. Don't worry, there'll be another episode soon.